Okay, so I will put pencils and erasers and pens and the calculators and all that stuff in the media center for you. You're taking the test in the media center, so you'll need to report there Wednesday morning. Do you know where the media center is? Like if you drive back like you're gonna go to the stadium and you like drive past the stadium, there's a building right there, like a new building.
It's like
You just drive through the parking lot.
attached to that big long building.
Yeah, it's attached to the field house back there. That's where you'll go Wednesday morning, and I'll have breakfast for you, and I'll probably buy like some peppermints and stuff, gum for you to like have during the exam, so you can stay focused. So I'll have all of that, and so you really shouldn't need to bring anything else.
Jay was just asking where to park, and I said right next to the building, but he said he thought we're not supposed to park there right now because they're returfing the field.
Oh, I know. I'll find out though. I'll send y'all a
I mean,
message
it's not a big deal. We can always just park in our normal spot.
and walk back there. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. So just make sure that you don't bring anything that you're not supposed to. Make sure that you turn your cell phone off. Apparently you're not supposed to bring mechanical pencils. I'm glad I read that. So I won't buy y'all mechanical pencils. You don't need to bring scratch paper. There'll be plenty of room in the book, and they actually give you one that you can write in. Don't bring anything that makes noise. Don't bring any subject-related clothing, so don't have like all your calculus formulas on your shirt. And don't bring food or drink. Like I said, I'll provide breakfast and some snacks and stuff for y'all. Alright, so here's some strategies for math and science AP tests. So, especially on the free response, it's a good idea to read all of them in the section, which there'll be one section that has 2, so read both of them and decide which one you're going to try first. And then the other section will have 4, so you'll want to read all those. And determine which ones you feel the most prepared to answer and do those first. That way you don't have to worry about time, running out of time, getting bogged down on a question that you're having trouble with. Do the ones that you feel good about. In the exam booklet, there's an insert that has the same questions without the blank answer spaces. You can remove that from the book and use it for reference, but you don't get credit for anything that you write on that. So I would not waste time writing on it. I would just write everything that you need to write in your booklet. If you write something that you don't like, unless you have something better to replace it with, I would just leave it. If you start working and then you realize you're doing something wrong and you know the right way to do it, don't erase all of it, just put an X through it and start over again. Because they're only going to grade things that you have an X out. So if you X it out, they're not going to grade them. Show all your work. Partial credits given for partial solutions. If the answer is not correct, you're not likely to receive credit for correct thinking if they can't see the evidence of your process. So if you do work that you think is correct, put an X through it. Don't waste time erasing it. Also, if you're working a problem and like a free response and it has like parts A, B, C, and D, and you need your answer from part A to answer part B, and you know how to do part B but you don't know how to do part A, make like a valid attempt at part A, even if you know it's wrong. Get the answer that you get from part A and use it in part B. Your answer for part B will be wrong, but you'll still get full credit for part B because your work was right. You just used the wrong thing for part A. Does that make sense? So like, don't keep the fact that you can't do part A from letting you do part B. Like, don't sit there and go, oh, if only I could do part A, I could answer part B. Try part A, come up with something, and use it in part B, and you'll get credit for part B. Organize your answers as clearly and neatly as possible, showing your steps. Remember, a grader is grading it, and they have to be able to see your reasoning and proof that you deserve the credit. Oh yeah, I just said that. It's not necessary to simplify numerical expressions or carry out calculations. For example, I think that you would probably still get credit for the answer even if you didn't know that cosine of pi was -1 or that sine of 0 was 0. If you leave your answer as cosine of pi, I think that they'll still give you the credit. At least according to this from College Board, it says that they will. It's important to pay attention to units for quantities that have them and keep track of your units. You will lose points if you don't have the units and it tells you, include your units in your answer. And you shouldn't use a scattershot approach. You shouldn't just write down a bunch of junk and hope that the grader will take mercy on you and pick out the ones that are right. They're only going to grade one answer. If you have multiple answers, you're not going to get the credit. So be sure that you make it clear to them what you want them to grade. Okay, these are tips specific for the calculus test. Show all your work. Don't round partial answers. That means if I'm finding the area between two curves and I have to find the little point of intersection and it's a decimal, don't round that decimal. Store it in your calculator. Because you could get a rounding error. If I use a rounded answer to find another answer, my answer is going to be even more off. Does that kind of make sense? Don't let points at the beginning keep you from getting points at the end. We said that. If you use your calculator to solve an equation, write the equation first. If you use your calculator to find an integral, write the integral first. If you're going to use your calculator to do anything on the free response, still write down on the paper what it was you used it for, because they want to see how you came up with your numbers. We talked about don't erase bad solutions, just cross them out. Do not use your calculator for anything but to graph equations, compute numerical derivatives, compute definite integrals, and solve equations. You can use your calculator to help you kind of examine things, but your work has to stand alone. So if it's something that we've learned how to do in calculus, like find a max or a min, or a point of inflection, or where something's increasing or decreasing, you can't use your calculator to justify that. You can't say, I know it's increasing because I looked at my calculator. If they were looking for where something's increasing, you have to show that the derivative's positive there. That's what they want you to do. Be sure you've answered what they asked. If you can eliminate, actually, these are old tips, even though I just printed this out. You should guess. There's no disadvantage to guessing on the multiple choice. They don't count off. And if they ask for justification, think about what needs justification. The whole thing about where's the function increasing, justify your answer. Justify your answer means that's where the derivative's positive. They want you to make the connection between the calculus that you would use to prove that. So think about why they're asking for justification. Okay, so I kind of went through those in a hurry, but that's because I want to look at these. Right, these are the top 10 student errors on the AP Calculus exam. So we're going to look at them and talk about why they're errors and what you should do instead. So the first one says, assuming that because the second derivative is 0 at a value of x, that there's a point of inflection there. Why is that an error to assume that because the second derivative is 0, that there's a point of inflection? What else do you have to prove? Because that it's 0 is only one part of the point of inflection equation, that it changes signs. You have to also prove that the second derivative changes signs. So the fact that the second derivative is 0 there is only one part of the equation. It has to also change signs there. Same thing for the first derivative, assuming that because the first derivative is 0, that there's a maximum or a minimum there. Again, you have to prove that the derivative changes from positive to negative for a max, and negative to positive for a min. So you have to prove that there's a sign change. Just because the first derivative is 0 doesn't mean that it's a max or a min. Average rate of change of a function on an interval. People see rate of change, and we've said rate of change is slope, and slope is derivative. So they think, well, I'm supposed to take the derivative at each point and find the average, add them together and divide by 2. That's not average rate of change. Average rate of change of a function on an interval, you would use the slope formula. Derivatives tell you instantaneous rates of change. The slope formula tells you average rate of change. So average rate of change does mean slope. Average rate of change means the secant slope, which just means the slope between those 2 points, those 2 endpoints. This one we just learned today, volume by washers. It's really common for people to think to subtract the radiuses and then square. But what we just saw today, and it doesn't matter where the pi is, if it's on the inside or the outside, you have to square the radiuses separately and then subtract. So the order matters. You have to square then subtract, not subtract then square. Separable differential equations can be solved without separating the variables. You have to separate the variables. We'll look at one of those in a minute. Omitting the plus C. It's common. You have to put the plus C. And it really creates a problem for you when they give you the initial value for something. Graders will assume correct antecedents for pronouns. Don't use it. Don't say, I know that it is increasing because it is positive there. Say, I know the function is increasing because the derivative is positive there. Like, I wouldn't use it at all. Think how Elmoth talks and make your justifications that way. He never uses pronouns. If the correct answer came from your calculator, the grader will assume your setup was correct. No, you need to write down what you did. Another one, people think that anytime they see a fraction that it integrates to a logarithm. Remember that in order to integrate to a logarithm, the fraction has to have the top be the derivative of the bottom. If the top is the derivative of the bottom, then you use a natural log. But not all fractions go to natural logs. And the chain rule. People make lots of mistakes with the chain rule. This one, if I take the derivative of a function, where I've got an outside and an inside, I have to do the derivative of the outside, leave the inside alone, times the derivative of the inside. You can't forget that derivative of the inside part. So don't feel bad if these are errors that you've made, because these are the top 10 errors that people make. It's really common for people to make all of those. So. Does that kind of make sense? All right. So let's look at some more problems here. Let's try number 4 from last year's test. We're just going to kind of look at, there's the rest, I've gone over like the types of problems that you're pretty much guaranteed to see every year. The other problems that they ask about kind of vary year to year, it just depends on what they want to ask. So this is one that they asked last year. This is 2012 number 4. So this is the non-calculator portion. So just take a few minutes and see what you can do with this one, and then we will go over it.